So Dave, a positive end to the season last Saturday with that title win against Bursko. A long, hard fought season. Just give me your overall assessment of it a week or so on.
I think to say a positive ending probably doesn't quite do it justice, does it? I think to finish the season, I think in front of nearly 9,000 fans and to go and put a show on and win the game 4-0 and the celebrations at the end of the game, I'm still trying to sort of put it into perspective in my mind. I think a little bit still quite unbelievable. I still think I'm going to wake up and it's going to be the day of the game again, and it didn't all happen. But yeah, I think it was a fitting way to end what's been a fantastic season for everyone involved at the club. The players, the staff have been brilliant. People behind the scenes, people who do a lot of the work, the grunt work that people don't see. And obviously particularly the fans. So I think to finish it in the way that we did, 15 games, sort of 15 wins on the bounce, 9 clean sheets on the bounce, and to win 4-0 on last day in front of that many people, and the coverage that the club got from Sky and everyone, and obviously massive thanks to Rani and all the people who covered the game as well, because I think that gave us some much needed exposure, and the exposure that we ultimately we deserved.
Yeah, and I think the way that it ended, it probably couldn't have been any better. And I think you look sort of 2-0 up in the first half, that would have settled any nerves that may have been there. Sort of, I think the fans sort of chilled out after 2-0. So for you, as you say, it couldn't have gone any better, and it wasn't maybe as dramatic as it may have could have been.
Yeah, and I think when we when we were looking at the fixtures and sort of trying to plot a graph in terms of what we needed to try and pick up, obviously we never in our wildest dreams thought we could win 15 games on the bounce. We never thought that we would have to either, if I'm being completely honest. Obviously when you look at that game against Bursko at the end, there is an element of God, I hope we don't need something in that last day, because they are a good side, and they've got a good manager who coaches them well. They're really organised. They've got some very experienced players. So with that can come different challenges when you come to Gig Lane. Obviously, sort of the experience can kick in, and they can make things difficult for you and frustrate you a little bit. So it was a game we were worried about going into it. Sort of when we were looking sort of 5, 6, 7 games to go, we were thinking, God, we don't need something on the last day. But do you know what? Like the group of players, they've had loads of challenges put in front of them over the last sort of couple of months, over the last 2-3 months, and they've come through them with flying colours. And that was another one on Saturday. It was, I talked about the nervousness of the staff when we were having sort of obviously offline conversations, looking at that last game and looking at a few games leading up to that as well, to be fair. But there was an element of, with each passing game, like the confidence grew within the staff and everyone as well. I think it was just like, you know what, like, we're not going to be on the end of a bad referee decision or the end of a mistake from a centre half or a goalkeeper. Like, whatever happens in the game, this group will deal with it and will come through with flying colours. And I think full credit to them. Like we say a lot, I think playing for a club of this size, it is a massive privilege. But let's not think it's all roses. It can be very, very difficult for these lads. They're not used to playing in front of nearly 9,000 people and 3,500 people each week, and they do feel bad performances. They do feel it when they make mistakes. They do feel it when they get a little bit of sort of feedback, negative feedback. So, but they've just become so robust, and the way that they manage those challenges and those setbacks, I think it's massive credit to them. And I was really pleased for them to get the just reward, sort of to perform the way they did in the last game in front of so many people and get to pick that trophy up.
We look at the squad throughout the season, and we've spoke about it on many times, how it's developed and people have come in, people have left the club. How proud are you of the group as a whole to sort of some of these players that lifted that trophy on Saturday have been here since minute one in pre-season, and some have sort of, as I said, come in throughout. So I guess for you to sort of lead a group that have had that consistency in this season with a changing group as such at many parts, I guess that must give an immense amount of pride to show how adaptable this squad has been.
Absolutely, and look, I think obviously people will always look at incomings and outgoings and whatever else. I think at this level of football, there's always more changes than probably what some of our fans are used to being in the EFL, where people are on sort of 2-3 year contracts. So that will always happen. Has there been more change and more incomes and outcomes than I would have liked? Yeah, I think obviously I've said before that I have made some mistakes. We have made mistakes in terms of some of the recruitment. I think there's no getting away from that. But also, I think there's 14 players out of the current group who've played 75% or more of the games we played in the season. And then when you add into that sort of the likes of your Josh Greggs and your Brad Carroll, who's been here both been here since the first kick in pre-season, but unfortunately haven't played that many games through injuries. It's a solid base of the squad. So yes, there's been players who've come in and gone, and there's been players who it just didn't work for. And again, when I say that we've made mistakes, I'm not saying that we've brought in bad players. Sometimes when you move to a new club, and you see it at the top level, don't you? See it in the Premier League, players move from one club to another, and it just doesn't work for whatever reason. So it's certainly not a dig at any of the players who aren't here now. I think we wouldn't be where we are without them. Some of them have played massive parts in terms of picking up those points early doors and the cup run and everything else. But the squad has evolved, and I think it's evolved from, largely speaking, I'm not trying to generalise it too much, but a group of young, very talented individuals into a team of men. And I think that's a way to describe it. That again, very generalised overview, but like I said before, this group can deal with anything now. And I think sometimes, maybe early in the season, we were a little bit fragile at times, particularly if we conceded the first goal or something went against us in the game. Sometimes it would hit us and we wouldn't be able to sort of kickstart our play again, either till a break-in play at half-time or sort of, something happened and maybe a moment of brilliance or whatever could sort of re-energise or re-spark the group. So the group has evolved, and I don't think that's just about players coming in. Obviously, the likes of DJ, the likes of Yiraz Chalmers, those type of players have been pivotal in terms of when they've come in. Your Nikki Adams, like those three players alone, what they've added to the group in terms of personality, leadership, determination has been absolutely immense. But it's also been about some of the younger players who've started to step up more. I think, if you look at players like Bobby Carroll and Rusty, very, very quiet players, sort of play within themselves, do the jobs. They've never had very rarely have a bad game from the start of the season, but they've actually taken on more leadership type roles and players are looking up to them. They've actually been a little bit more vocal. So, yes, players coming in have massively helped evolve the group, but also some of those existing players stepping up and almost realising themselves as important people as well as important players within the group.
Well, you mentioned that the likes of Bobby and Rusty there and Cam Fogarty as well, specifically on Cam and Rusty, the players that have, I suppose, been most consistent in terms of their statistics this season, in terms of total number of appearances. And I think, obviously, Cam came in probably a month into the season. Rusty's been there since the start of pre-season. So I think it shows, like I've said before, no matter when a player has come into this group, they've sort of been there and done it. And Rusty and Cam have been two key figures in this team this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's a fair few of them who are sort of pushing high 40s in terms of the number of appearances played. I think Rusty's well over 50. I think he's on 54 appearances. So, the numbers are just, it's ridiculous, isn't it, for any part-time footballer to be playing 50, 54, 55 games in a season anyway. But also in terms of the way that we want to try and play, in terms of being on the front foot, obviously constantly having to move the ball to try and break teams down when they come and try and make things difficult for us. And then what we expect of the players out of possession. It's not just about playing 55 games where, previously maybe someone like Rusty, where maybe some people would have said he's lazy out of possession in the past. We're asking him to do an awful lot more as well. So those 55 games, the running stats of those three players you talked about, Bobby, Cam and Rusty, are through the roof. They're doing 10, 11k a game. So it's been tough for them, but again, three fantastic players, and they've been a massive part of what we've done.
In terms of the end of the season, I think if you look at the stats, 8 goals in 3 games for Tyler James, obviously since he he's coming from Padiham. He's very much impressed the fans, and I think for him the way he's rounded off the season for his goals, he must be absolutely delighted.
Yeah, he is, and again another lad who's sort of quite quiet. He came in and he wasn't overawed by any stretch. I'm not saying that, but obviously he's very aware that he's coming into a big club and into quite a strong group at the time. So Tyler's goes unnoticed a little bit in the changing rooms, but in terms of what he brings on the pitch, and he starts to open up as well. He starts to come onto the shell, but in terms of what he brings on the pitch, he's just got something a little bit special. That third man run, he's always got a great eye for goal, and obviously we watched him quite a lot, and he was a player that was actually on our radar at the start of the season, and we obviously went in a different direction at the time, but as we were working through the season, and we thought we needed to add a few more sort of goals from midfield, and that's when we obviously made an approach for Tyler and brought him in. But yeah, when you move to a big club like this, it does take a little bit of time. He had a great start, first couple of games, and then he came out to the side. He had a couple of performances that were below par for him and his standards. And we've had a few chats about that. And I said to him not to worry about it. It'll take a bit of time. You will come good. It will work for you. And we were really, really confident in him. And obviously the last sort of 3 or 4 games, he was fantastic. And the goals he scored ultimately got us over the line.
You mentioned the clean sheets before. I think it's wrong for us not to mention Mitch Allen and his contributions throughout the season. He's certainly been there at the sort of dangerous of times as such in defence when you've needed a shot stopper, and he's pulled off some amazing saves in games this season. Has picked up sort of league accolades for goalkeeper of the month throughout the season as well. But I guess for him to end on so many consecutive clean sheets, he must be absolutely delighted, and you must be delighted with what he's brought this season.
Yeah, Mitch is a fantastic goalkeeper. He's someone who we've chased a number of times to try and get into obviously Bury at the start of the season and at clubs previously. In terms of his all-round goalkeeping, his shot stopping, his distribution, second to none, and he's a great lad. He came in at a tough time. Obviously, we had Tom who was sort of working away and couldn't quite fully commit for the spell of time. And Mitch came in, he took that number 1 jersey, and I think since then he's been outstanding. He did have a sticky spell. I think you'll be comfortable sort of talking through that, and I think an element of the weight and the pressure of playing for Bury got on top of him a little bit for a spell in time, and he made a couple of mistakes, and I think that hit him quite hard personally. But he came through it, and again, it's like the famous saying, it's not how hard you can get hit, it's how many times you get back up again. So he's proved that, and he's proved his character as well in terms of how strong he is, and he's a fantastic goalkeeper. And one of the most challenging things playing for the side that's winning games consistently as a goalkeeper is being able to keep that concentration. Obviously, you're playing for a team maybe near the bottom, and it's save after save after save after save, constantly under pressure, constantly trying to organise your back line. When you're winning games and you're having the majority possession, it requires a different skill set, and being able to concentrate and being able to make sure you're switched on for that one save. He only has to make 1 save or 2 saves in a game, and making sure he can do that to the same level as what he would be if he was busy constantly is a real skill set in itself.
And finally, on sort of individual players, Nikki Adams obviously announced his retirement before that final game against Bursko. In your sort of piece for the website, you were sort of full of praise for Nikki and what he's offered to you and the rest of the group since he came into the club in December. Just tell me a bit about sort of your interactions with Nikki and what it's been like to work with him since he came back to the club.
Yeah, and look, I think a lot of what I've said about Nikki so far is about Nikki as a person rather than as a player, and I think it'd be a miss for us to underestimate the impact he's had on the pitch. He came in at a challenging time, and I think he signed just before the Remica game that we lost, and obviously that was a really tough day at the office for us. He missed the game because of I think his wife had an car accident on the day, so he missed that game. But then he came in and he sort of settled things down, and the way he plays football, his football intelligence and brain is just absolutely different level. He's not as fast as he used to be. I think he'll openly admit that. His legs don't work quite like they used to, but he's 5 minutes ahead of everyone else. It's like he's watching the game on repeat in terms of his positioning and the way that he finds space, and technically on the ball he's outstanding. So he did add an awful lot from that side. Away from the pitch, it's really difficult to put into words. He's got like an aura about him. He's got like a way of where he comes into the room and straight away people know he's there. You don't have to see him, you can almost feel that he's in and around, and he just instantly commands respect from people. And that's not because of he's a big time and he walks around and people know where he is. It's not like that at all. He's very grounded, he's very down to earth. But the way he treats people, the way he talks to people, it's like there's no big time about him. There's no, he doesn't sort of talk down to people at all in any way, shape or form. He reacts and he meets people on their level, if that makes sense. So he's got a way of speaking to the younger lads in terms of giving them advice, but without being over the top with it and trying to push things down people's throats. Really good with the older players as well. His banter, and he's a funny guy. Some of the stuff he comes out with and the remarks he makes, he is quick off the mark with that. And he got the group smiling. And I know that sounds a little bit sort of irrelevant in some ways, but it's not, because look, ultimately, like in any walk of life, you're at your best when you're happy. In terms of delivering your job and what you've got to do. So he was massive for that, and I won't go into full details in terms of the impact he had on myself and the other staff, because I think that's sort of a personal element. But like I've not known Nicky well for a long time, but I would consider him a true friend, and I've spoken to him every day since the last game of the season. I'm going to go and watch him. He's taking his team to Chadderton on Thursday. I'm going to go and watch him take the under-18s there. I was with his dad yesterday, spoke to his dad yesterday at a game. So he's had a massive impact on me personally, and he's someone who I'd love to work with again in the future at some point. But his career now as a player, obviously he's decided it's time. His career as a coach or a manager or an assistant or whatever it is he wants to do, I think it knows no bounds, because of the type of person he is, with his football intelligence and with his knowledge and his background. I think he could be whatever he wants to be.
Yeah, it certainly is an exciting time for us to see, I suppose, where Nicky develops. You mentioned there about the game away at Litherland, and you look at, I suppose, moments in the season where it hasn't gone as well. Where for you on the pitch was the lowest moment in the season? There's been games this season where, obviously, there was the first defeat of the season at Lower Breck. There was that game at Litherland that you mentioned. There was the defeat at West Dids. If you're looking at games overall this season, what was the lowest point?
I think probably the West Didsby one was the lowest point. Obviously, the Remica one was a really tough sort of defeat to take away to Remica, and again, it's not trying to be disrespectful in any way to Remica. They were far the better side on the day, and they deserved that result. It was an awful night in terms of the weather, the pitch. It was really heavy. It was torrential rain. It was one of those tough games where ultimately, on the day, the team that battles the best and sort of picks up all those second balls sort of generally wins the game, and Remica absolutely did that. I think they sort of ran over us in the middle of the park. They created lots of chances, and they were a really, really good side on the day, and look, they fully deserved to win the game. So that was a tough one. Obviously, the Lower Breck defeat, that was tough, because I know a lot of people were talking about it's Bury or Rami going to go win the league. I always had an outside, I was sort of worried about Lower Breck and their form, because they did have a difficult or challenging start, but you could see them coming in sort of from a distance, sort of like that horse in the race that sort of coming and galloping sort of around the last few fences. So I think that was a tough one. I thought we were really, really poor first half, and we gave ourselves so much to do. I do think we were on the wrong end of a couple of really poor refereeing decisions that day. And again, not making excuses. I thought Lower Breck overall deserved to win the game. But But the second half, particularly the last 20 minutes, half an hour, the way we performed, we probably should have got a point out of it. I think we missed a couple of really, really key chances at the end to try and make it 4-4. But yeah, I think the West Didsbury one was nothing other than just, we got well and truly beat on the day by a side that's a very, very good side. Obviously, we were a little bit unlucky yesterday not to go through in the playoff semi-final. But that was a day that was quite an eye-opening day because we were outplayed, outfought, outbattled. We were well beaten on the day, and not just beaten, but pretty humiliated in terms of the 4-0 result. And that there was a lot of soul searching after that game. There was a lot of thoughts around. I'll admit, we did have some doubts. Are we going to be able to do this? Is this the right group? Is the problem? Where are the problems? How deep are they? And obviously that's how you feel as a manager after it. It's a lonely place when you have a defeat like that. But that's where you need the people around you, and that's where obviously the likes of Tim comes in, and the other staff, and Sam Ashton's brilliant for that type of stuff. He is a real motivator, and that's when you need those people to fall back on. And and again, I had quite a few contacts from people on the board after that game, and it was around, look, it was a bad result. It's a bad performance. By all means, be upset about it, but tomorrow's a new day. You need to get on with it. So we had a lot of support, and like obviously we see comments, and I know some of the fans were really upset, and absolutely deservedly so. They paid their hard-earned money to go and watch that game, and it just wasn't acceptable in any way, shape, or form. But the support we got from within the support certainly I got from within the group in terms of the players, some of the senior players, from the staff, my staff, and then particularly from the board as well, was second to none. And it does sort of re-energise you, that, and it's like, okay, well, let's harness this feeling, because I'm not prepared to feel it again.
Let's turn this back into a sort of more of a positive moment. Looking at the sort of travelling support that we've had throughout the season, there's been sort of so many away days as such in the league, and earlier on in the season, fans sort of travelling hundreds of miles in the FA Cup. If you could pick a favourite away day of the season, what would it be?
Radcliffe. I think Blythe was a good one as well, though, to be fair. I think that was... I think obviously when you go to these sort of bigger clubs and the grounds that they've got, obviously it does help create that bit more of an atmosphere, because of obviously it's normally terraced and a little bit enclosed. I thought the Blythe game, I thought on the day we were exceptional, and the fans to travel that far, it was a really special day. But I think the Radcliffe game, again, it wasn't just about the game and the performance; it was the fans. It was complete and utter sellout. There were tickets being resold for more than face value. I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? We're talking about sort of a North West Counties team playing, a local rivals from the Connie North, and we're selling tickets for over face value. But I think that obviously the day was very special as well. Obviously in terms of what had happened off the pitch, and with Paul and sadly passing away, and the game felt a little bit less important in terms of a football. It was more around putting on a spectacle and coming together as a community as well. So I think all of it rounded in. Obviously the performance on the pitch was something special, particularly second half. We had to make quite a few changes, I think, at half time to try and spark something into life, because I just felt like we were going out of the game with a bit of a whimper, I think, in the first half. So at second half, I mean, we ran all over them, and for a team as good as Radcliffe, I think full respect for the lads, and all credit to them for the performance second half. But that was a brilliant day.
I think going on, I think Radcliffe will be happy with where their season has ended. Obviously, they've retained their National League North status. Looking ahead, I suppose, to next season, I'm sure there'll be plenty of discussions in terms of how the squad looks for next season, and you and Tim and the rest of the management will be discussing that with the board. But I suppose without going into too much detail, I guess those plans are now well underway.
Yeah, they are. I think they started almost instantaneously. I think we've had a number of meetings now to look at targets and decide where we need to strengthen. I think everyone will agree that this group is very strong and put us into step four. And with the current group, I think we would do well. Look, like any time, every team wants to strengthen. Every club and every team wants to strengthen every new season, regardless of whether you've been promoted or not. So obviously, going up a league, we do need to make sure that we are well equipped for that level. It is a little bit more physical. It is a little bit more demanding physically, and that side of the game, I think we do need to be better at, and that's where we will look to be making a few improvements. But yeah, the goal, obviously, I've got to try and speak to each player individually over the next week or so. But the goal is to try and retain the vast majority of the current squad, and then add some key signings, through the span of the team, through certain positions to make sure that we can compete next year.
I suppose when you're looking at this squad, many of them have sort of played step 4, step 3, some step 2 football previously. I guess when they've come into, I don't know, a club like Bury to play sort of step 5, it must, I suppose, you've got those players that have got that experience to push it to the next level as such, and then you've also, I suppose, got that opportunity to develop maybe the players likes of maybe Lewis Burn, Tyler James that haven't maybe had that opportunity to play at that level before. You've got to, I suppose, group it all together with potential new additions as well.
Yeah, you have, and look, I think we've always wanted to try and build a squad that's capable. What we don't want to do is try and get a squad of players where we have to refresh the whole squad every year. You go and get a team that is really experienced in the North Counties. Lots of players who've won it before in the past, and you go 18 players, and you go, right, okay, next season, brand new set of players, maybe 1 or 2 going with you. We don't want to have a sort of a clean slate every sort of pre-season. I think it's riddled with risk. I think we obviously had to do that this year. A lot of that wasn't through our choice. Obviously, players decided they wanted to move on, and until I speak to the players, obviously I'm saying we want to retain. We don't know where people are going to be at, because people may get offers higher up. They may get offers that we can't compete with financially. But I'm hoping with the draw of the club and the way that we've played, and I hope that the majority of players want to stay. And like you said, a lot of them have got that experience, certainly at step 4, if not higher. So the idea behind the squad building was to make sure we could try and retain as many as possible. Hopefully we can. If we can retain sort of 10, 12 of the current group, maybe a few more, then I'll be really happy. And then we're looking to sort of maybe add 6 players and 6, 7 players or whatever. So I think that's where we're sort of at. Obviously, again, we're making up sort of rough feel and numbers. Don't take that as a definite. It's not necessarily about we've got to keep 12 and any 12. It's making sure that we've got the right players in the right positions, and ultimately there's already teams sniffing around our players. There's clubs a lot higher looking at our players and starting to contact those players now. And again, I'm fully respectful that happens, and we know it happens, and we're not going to certainly try and stop it. I think it's important that lads understand what their options are, but we want to keep the most of that group together at Bury for next season.
The fans will very much still be on a high after last weekend, and you've sort of had various comments for them throughout the season. But as we round off, what's, I suppose, your final message to them off the back of this season?
Just a massive thank you. I think obviously playing in front of a fan base like that, it's unheard of at this level of football. I know that obviously you will talk about like your Chesters and Max and whatever who've sort of been through these levels and in recent years. But other than that, I mean, even those two, sort of the amount of fans that we get, it's just ridiculous. I mean, the noise and the way that they come to games, generally really, really positive support as well, because that can be quite tough at times, because obviously they're getting used to understanding what non-league's about rather than being in the EFL. So sometimes it can probably get a little bit frustrating for them with players sort of maybe coming and going, or maybe a few more mistakes in terms of the way that we play rather than what you'd expect sort of in a professional environment. So it can be frustrating for them, I'm sure it can. But the support they've given us from day one has been phenomenal. I think obviously you often think about the supporters as that group of 3,500 people, 3,000 people, whatever sort of people are there at the game, but it's the personal interactions I think I cherish the most. Obviously, having had the noise that A Block and whatever else bring it's second to none in the games. But when you actually start to speak to some of these people individually, and you get a feeling for what they feel about the club and how important it is to them, I think that's what makes this club a little bit more special than any other. The passion and the way that they talk about the club, you see their eyes glow up, when they're talking about a player or a goal or something that happened sort of 1972 or whatever it is. I think it lights people up, and I think that's, like I said, I think that's what makes this club really, really special.
Dave, we'll keep up to date with you across the summer with various different news lines, but thanks for your time today.
Yes, thank you.